Thank you, Mr. Chairman, acting ranking member, Madam Chairwoman. Thanks for coming in today. I'm always impressed with your testimony, your attempts to be very straight with us and frank, and we certainly appreciate it, I think, on both sides of the aisle. Most of my questions have been addressed, but I'd like to touch on a few of those, if I can, in my 5 minutes. Mr. Duffy and I, just to illustrate some of the bipartisanship here, worked together on the tick size pilot, and we know you're moving along with that. You answered the questions that he asked. I'd just like, a brief update on when you think we could have that in place, number one, and what's the major concern? I mean, one of the things that we tried to work through in designing it and getting input was how to structure it so we got really good information. The objective of it, of course, is to get more attention to the smaller issue stocks.
So I think that, and again, I think it's an enormously important pilot to proceed with. I mentioned before that I think May 6th is the date on which the Commission needs to act on it. In terms of,
when you say act, you mean approve to go forward with it, to not, or?
Yes, in whatever form is. Obviously we've gotten comments on various features of it. Those comments are being studied very carefully. Two of the major areas of comment, there were many, frankly, or not many, but certainly several. One was the Trade At feature, where we got a lot of comments. The length that I was discussing with Congressman Duffy as well. But our goal is to get maximum information so we can actually gauge whether increasing these tick sizes, will help.
Yes, some of the commenters have kind of prejudged it, right, and said that it's not going to be effective. Well, let's find out, and get good information, as you said. So we would encourage you to move forward with that. We've also been working, just learning more about venture exchanges, and I've talked to constituents in my district, some of whom have expressed some concern about that. These would be people that work for large institutions, concerns about maybe fraud. They had some issues with that in Canada. What concerns would you have? Could you share those concerns with me as I continue to look at this issue?
Yes, and I think the venture exchanges are also something we're seriously looking at. Obviously, no decisions made as to whether to proceed or how to proceed. We have approved prior venture exchange applications. But I think one of the reasons that at least is pointed to for the failure in Canada is who are you actually having trade on those exchanges? Is it a race to the bottom, which you do not want?
Right.
And so when you're setting your listing standards, even though they're not as high in some ways as on the major exchanges, you want to make sure that you're setting them where they ought to be set and you have the disclosures that you need so that you're not setting yourself up for failure and fraud, frankly. So those are issues that you do have to bore into when you're designing this.
Great. So you've heard a lot on the fiduciary rule from various members. I'd like to associate myself with the comments that Mr. Himes made. And what is your overall objective there in striking a balance between, the various, folks weighing in?
And again, as I say, we're kind of, it's a complex, challenging rulemaking. I mean, the objective is that if you are providing whatever your title is, investment advisor, broker dealer, personalized securities advice to a retail investor, that you act in the best interests of that investor without regard to your own financial or other interest. Now, that's right out of 913 in Dodd-Frank. That's kind of the beginning, of the rulemaking. You've obviously got to specify, how do you define that standard? What kind of standard is it? What does it require? How does it impact on, current business practices? And clearly, you get parameters in 913 that say, that principal transactions and being compensated transactionally are not in and of themselves a violation of a fiduciary duty, and you want to be sensitive, and indeed Dodd-Frank directs you to be sensitive to the existing business models. So as I was mentioning before, you don't end up striking the wrong balance here.
It strikes me that that's the biggest challenge. Is that kind of your sense of it too? I mean, in terms of the existing business models out there, and it's one thing to have transparency. Look, I know what I'm getting into with this product or with that product, but that's, as Mr. Himes I think accurately pointed out, I don't know that we differentiate very well among the various products that are out there.
No, I think, there are a number of challenges, but I certainly think that is a primary one.
And finally, I'd just like to again, associate myself with the remarks of Mr. Lynch and the seriousness with which you took his comments. I think very important issues that you've got a lot of important things on your plate. We appreciate your great work on each of them. Thanks.
Thank you.